To his right is Mr. Lim Kin Kwan, Divisional Officer Policy of the Fire Services Department. To the far right is Mr. Kong Wing Chung, Senior Superintendent. And to his left, Mr. Li Huaiwa, Senior Superintendent of the OCTB, and Wang Wai Shun, Senior Superintendent Operations. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would ask the Assistant Commissioner, Mr. Chow, to give you information about the operation of the Polytechnic University. Mr. Chow. Thank you. Let me sum up that in the PolyU operation, on the 27th of November, the Polytechnic University informed the police that there is a large amount of dangerous items in the campus and there was wide-scale vandalism. We have the legal responsibility to deal with dangerous items. In the process, we hope to complete the collection of evidence and to remove these dangerous items and to return a safe campus back to the Polytechnic University. We have formed a safety team. When we entered the campus, it includes the government chemists, fire officers, as well as members of the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Bureau officers from the Identification Bureau, as well as from the Criminal Investigation Unit. At about 10 o'clock, we have completed the whole process of removal of dangerous items as well as collection of evidence. At around noon, we have reopened all the roads around the campus of the Polytechnic University. We have, in the process, seized 3,989 petrol bombs. You can see that there are altogether 3,989 petrol bombs. We have also seized 1,339 compressed fuel. 100 of them are bundled up with petrol bombs. There are also 601 bottles of chemicals. In relation to offensive weapons, we have seized 573. That includes hammers, bows and arrows, catapults, and air rifles. In our operation, there involved a lot of complications and we are met with a number of challenges. Because of the vast size of the Polytechnic University and the fact that there are different degrees of damage on different floors and different buildings, we found that in every corner of every podium we have identified dangerous items of various shades and forms as well as offensive weapons. Fire officers as well as police officers had spent a lot of time to clear these dangerous items so that explosives or dangerous items would not pose any danger to those present, including reporters at the scene as well as police officers at the scene. We have also seen some LPG gas canisters and petrol bombs. They were left under the sun in an open air area for some time. If there is an explosion, you may imagine that the consequences will be quite dire. We have seized weapons as offensive weapons as well as dangerous items. They match those we have seen rioters use on the 17th and the 18th. They include 12 catapults. They were used to launch petrol bombs and bricks from a distance. On the 17th of November, the media liaison cadre member was shot in the calf. We have found 28 bows and 220 arrows. We understand that in the whole Polytechnic University incident, it was a spin-off from an occupation of a university on the 17th of November, and subsequently attacks were launched at police officers. We have the duty to enforce the law. There were rioters making accusations against the police officers, saying that we stormed the campus. It is pure fabrication. In the end, we're happy to see that the whole incident has been resolved in a peaceful manner. That's all for my report. As Mr. Charles said, since the beginning of November, we have seen a number of universities in Hong Kong being occupied by rioters and students. They have been subject to various degrees of damages. Some of them have been turned into armories and training grounds. I would like to take stock of what happened in past 3 weeks in these tertiary institutions. 3 weeks ago, rioters took over Chinese University. They threw miscellaneous items onto the Tolo Highway, resulting in also the Israel being stopped. At the same time, there are people in Hong Kong U, City U, as well as Baptist University causing damage and road blockage. When rioters have retreated from the Chinese University, they have gone to different places. Some of them went to the Polytechnic University. You may recall at that time that the Polytechnic University was turned into an arsenal. Rioters kept producing petrol bombs. Some of these rioters charged into the Cross Harbour Tunnel and set the toll booths alight. Some citizens were trying to clear these roadblocks. They were attacked. One of our officers was also shot with an arrow. Subsequently, when we deployed officers to control the situation near the Polytechnic University to contain the situation, we have taken some action, and we've also taken into account the health and safety of those who are staying in the campus. We have always been sticking to the principle of peaceful and flexible approach to resolve the matter. For those that are underage and for those who are in need of medical help, we have made special arrangements. We did not make instant arrest, but we keep the right to pursue the matter later. This week, we have liaised with the different stakeholders to enter the school campus to persuade those who are staying to come out. There are streams of people coming out peacefully. On Tuesday and Wednesday, the working group of the Polytechnic University found no other people staying in the campus. They have at the same time made a report to us that there were dangerous items in the campus. We have set up a safety team comprising 5 officers, police negotiation cadre members, bomb disposal officers, force media liaison cadre, to enter the campus to remove safety threats.
As Mr. Chow said, in our operation, we found almost 4,000 petrol bombs in the PolyU campus. And earlier at the Chinese University, we found almost 4,000 petrol bombs as well. And in the vicinity of the campuses, altogether, we found more than 10,000 petrol bombs. So we have faced the threat of more than 10,000 petrol bombs. If the police took a hardline approach against these protesters, the damage caused to the society would be unimaginable. So with the help of different parties, the police were able to resolve the crisis. Since the last press conference on the 19th, 12 police officers were injured, and throughout our operations, 483 officers were injured on duty. And I'd like to report the use of ammunition. Since the last press conference on 19th, we did not deploy tear gas, and on the 21st, we deployed one foam round in Yuen Long. In terms of arrest figures, I'd like to provide an up-to-date figure. And the adjusted total number of arrests stands at 5,890, including 4,368 males and 1,522 females aged between 11 and 83. The alleged crimes include taking part in an unlawful assembly, rioting, possession of offensive weapon, etc. In the PolyU incident, we arrested a total of 1,377 persons, of which the number of arrests or the number of persons taken away by the police upon leaving PolyU was 810, and another 567 were arrested around and in the vicinity of PolyU. The number of minors under the age of 18 who left after turning themselves over to the police and registering their information was 380. And we would like to clarify two incidents. First of all, there were rumors earlier indicating that at nighttime on the 18th of November, when the police were arresting members of, when the police were arresting rioting, they drove 3 buses, and they drove 3 buses into the public at high speed. Such claim was unsubstantiated. And at night on the 18th, thousands of rioters carried out acts of destruction and blocked roads along Yamate and Nathan Road. They hurled thousands of petrol bombs, which posed serious threats to the safety of the public. And without any other choice, the police deployed tear gas to disperse the crowds. And during the dispersal operation, rioters tried to dodge their liability, and some people tripped over when they were fleeing the scenes. And that night, we arrested 213 people in total, and 33 of them claimed to be feeling unwell, and they were taken to hospital, and medical workers provided immediate assistance at the site. Some people claim that the police drove 3 buses into the crowds at high speed. We clarified that it was untrue. Having checked the relevant records, we found that the time in which the buses were in which the buses appeared did not tally with the footage online, and there was a time difference of 45 minutes. So the locations were also different. One was at Pitt Street, the other at Soy Street. And when we found that some people tripped over at the scene, FSD staff already clarified that we did not obstruct any rescue work. The objective of the police was to arrest the rioters who constantly hurled petrol bombs. If the rioters were not there, we would not have to enforce the laws either. And I'd like to report certain cases. On the 27th of this month, upon report, the police arrived at a school in Manshan, and there were claims that a Sentry 4 and Sentry 6 student brought TP to school, and upon arrival at the scene, the police arrested those 2 students for possession of explosives, and the EOD officers also arrived at the site and seized the suspected explosives for examination at government laboratory. Upon returning to the police stations, we seized one empty cartridge in the wallet of one of the students, and he was arrested for possessing and ammunition without a license. Even though the TATP looks like a type of ordinary white powder, possession of explosives is a very serious crime, and the maximum penalty upon conviction is 20 years of imprisonment. In the past months, the police have detected a number of cases related to TATP, and recently we found that TATP might be in the hands of young people, and this is a very worrying trend. You can imagine that if even a small quantity of TATP goes off in the city or in school, the results could be disastrous. If members of the public spot suspected explosives, please report to the police as soon as possible and never underestimate the power of such items. And at night time on the 27th of November, at Manshan Shopping Center, 4 shops were found to be subject to criminal damage. And arrests were made at the Manshan Promenade. 7 males and 1 female were arrested. They were aged 12 to 17, and they were alleged to have committed criminal damage, of which a spanner and a set of skeleton keys were found on one 13-year-old boy, and a pair of scissors from another 12-year-old boy, and both were arrested on suspected possession of offensive weapon. The cases are being followed up by the Shatin Criminal Investigation Unit 4. The police are concerned that the age of arrestees is getting younger and younger, but the crimes they are committing is getting more and more serious, and young people are having to pay a heavier price, and this is something no society wants to see. I urge teachers and parents to pay greater attention to the acts of our young people and provide appropriate counseling. I would now hand over to Mr. Lam Kien Kwan from the FSD. Good afternoon. On behalf of the FSD, I'd like to report the work of the FSD the past 2 days. Yesterday, in the past 2 days, the FSD deployed explosives unit and various operation units. We deployed a total of 94 officers to PolyU, and we carried out fire safety assessments on the dangerous items on campus. And with the assistance of PolyU staff, we adopted a risk-based approach in inspecting the platforms, all campus buildings, laboratories, and dangerous goods warehouses. And in our inspections in the past day and a half, we found a lot of dangerous chemicals, including the petrol bombs we mentioned, gas cartridges, and I'd like to show you some photos. Apart from petrol bombs and gas canisters, we found other Cat 5 dangerous goods. These are substances giving off inflammable vapor, or what we call inflammable liquids. We found a lot of such liquids on campus. We also found Cat 3 corrosive substances, including sulfuric acid and nitric acid. And we also found Cat 4 poisonous substances, which are controlled items, including sodium hypochlorite solution and small quantities of other dangerous items, including Cat 2 compressed gases, including compressed oxygen and compressed air as well. We also found Cat 6 substances, including sodium, and Cat 7 substances such as ammonium nitrate. In order to ensure public safety, we have adopted immediate action to minimize the fire safety risks at the site. we removed some dangerous goods so that they would no longer be exposed in the sunlight. For dangerous items already opened, the lids were closed in order to prevent further evaporation. As for items such as bricks, they were also removed. And for places with large quantities of dangerous goods, they were cordoned off in order to contain the damage. We have handed over the items to the police, and as of 11 a.m. during our operation concluded within PolyU, and we like to stress that inappropriate use of dangerous items might cause physical harm. Inhalation of substances might affect the respiratory tracts, and upon contact, there could be scalding of eyes and other parts of the body, and there could be permanent damage. I hope everyone would consider the safety of the public and please refrain from using any dangerous items during gatherings or protests. Thank you.
I will now make a brief summary. In the past 3 weeks, we have seen chaos in universities in Hong Kong. The incident has come to an end after we have seen the use of numerous petrol bombs and bows and arrows. We had a brief moment of peace. It turns out that a few days of peace in Hong Kong is a rare scene. We have been using the Cross-Harbour Tunnel for many years. It's only when we can't use it anymore that we realize how important it is to us. As we've said, we have seized close to 10,000 petrol bombs in various universities. If you imagine these petrol bombs being used in Hong Kong, it will bring catastrophic damage. When you sit in front of your television and watch petrol bombs flying everywhere in universities, did you think about how such clashes could be resolved? What happened at the Polytechnic University this time show us all that we could resolve the situation with no bloodshed. The solution lies in people giving up the use of violence. This leaves us a chance to communicate. When rioters put the petrol bombs in their hands down, that we can shake hands. Hong Kong people will have to talk, will have to communicate, and to give up violence. Hong Kong people should use reason to resolve crisis. Yesterday, we saw the chaos of the Polytechnic University coming to an end. Yesterday, it came to a close peacefully with no one being injured. We hope that the Polytechnic University incident could be a turning point of what's been happening in the past 6 months so that our society can return to reason and peace.
We'll first talk about the joint effort of the safety team in the Hong Kong Polytechnic University over the past 2 days. The safety team entered the campus yesterday and this morning to remove a large amount of dangerous items and collect evidence for crimes. Our cordon was lifted and the campus was handed over to the university management at around noon. To sum up, the police have seized in total 3,989 bottles of petrol bombs, 1,339 items of pressurized flammable liquid, 601 bottles of chemicals, and 573 items of offensive weapons. It's a joint effort of crime investigators, officers of Identification Bureau, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Bureau, as well as fire officers and government chemists. The campus was left in ruins and covered in bricks, glass fragments, and debris. No one single building or even one single floor was spared from the damage. We saw a large amount of gas canister and petrol bombs exposed to direct sunlight, leading to the risk of explosion. We also found a large number of offensive weapons. The police always adopt peaceful method and flexible approach to solve these crises. We have zero tolerance for any violent or criminal act. We strongly condemn the rioters for taking hostage of the university and using it as a weapon factory. The police will follow up on this case impartially and will bring all offenders to justice. All in all, we are thankful to all the parties who have worked with the police to solve this crisis peacefully. A university is supposed to be a breeding ground for talent, but it's turned into a battlefield for criminals and rioters over the past few weeks. Different universities in Hong Kong have been taken over and used as manufacturing bases for petrol bombs. Dangerous chemicals have been stolen from the laboratories. Major roads or even Cross Harbour Tunnel have been blocked. In response, the police have worked with different government departments and many different stakeholders to bring the situation under control. For PolyU, the police also adopt a special arrangement for underage people who leave the campus voluntarily. They are not arrested on the spot, but only had their personal data recorded and photos taken by police. We will follow up later. Moving on, there are several cases of interest I would like to highlight here. On the 27th of November, 2 secondary school students brought explosive TATP to their school in Ma On Shan. Police officers responded to the report, arrested 2 students for possession of explosive, and removed them safely. One of the arrested students even had empty cartridge on his possession. He was further arrested for possession arm and ammunition without a license. This case is really alarming for Hong Kong. It shows dangerous items and explosives have been fallen into the hands of young students. TATP may look just like white powder, but it's actually very destructive and unstable. Please don't underestimate the danger of possessing this explosive. Even if a small amount of TATP explode in a busy district, it can cause a disaster. Now, I will give you an update on arrest figures. In the whole PolyU incident, the police arrested 1,377 people, including 810 who left the campus and 567 who were arrested in the surrounding. 318 underage people were recorded by police and left the campus. In conclusion, adding up the 4,000 petrol bombs seized from PolyU, the 4,000 seized from Chinese university, and those from the vicinity of other university campus, there are as many as 10,000 petrol bombs scattered around Hong Kong. This large amount of petrol bomb has pushed our city to the brink of extreme danger. No excuse, no political agenda can glorify this reckless and ruthless violence. If you still condone violence, if you still refuse to cut ties with rioters, you are indeed an accomplice. We have stressed that low pace in Hong Kong is a lawless land. We certainly do not tolerate any criminal acts in university and will bring offenders to justice. We are thankful to see the PolyU episode coming to a final chapter. Please continue to support us in our effort to restore Hong Kong's safety and order. Thank you.
好，嚟緊落嚟會有我哋問答嘅環節嘅。明報。
The floor is now open for questions. Ming Pao, I'd like to follow up on what happened at night on the 18th at Yau Ma Tei. From footage online, we saw that when police officers tried to subdue protesters in Yau Ma Tei, when the protesters were completely subdued, he was hit in the calf 7 times by a police officer, and the officer only stopped beating when he was stopped by other officers. I'd like to ask why the police officer had to beat the subdued protester. What was the justification, and whether the officer would be punished or be suspended from duty? Yesterday, certain media representatives met Mr. Tang Wen-keung, the Commissioner of Police, and he indicated that police weapons might be upgraded and wooden baton rounds might be introduced. Do you have any plans to introduce such baton rounds? Mr. Tang also indicated that he might invite 1,000 retired officers to return to the force to provide assistance. And you also summoned about 200 special duty constables from the Immigration Department to provide assistance. Does it mean that the current police force of 30,000 officers would not be enough to deal with the actions? First of all, in terms of the use of force, we have always said that if the rioters do not use violence, we would not exercise any force. On the 3 questions you asked, for the first question about the Yau Ma Tei case, I would hand over to Mr. Kong. As for the use of wooden baton rounds, I would defer to Mr. Wong, and then I would address the question about police deployment. Thank you. On the 18th of November at night time, I'd like to provide a context of what happened that night. From news footage, you can see very clearly that at Yau Ma Tei and Mong Kok, in the vicinity of Nathan Road, more than 1,000 rioters gathered there. They constantly hurled bricks and petrol bombs at our officers. According to reports from our officers, after dispersal of 1 hour before the arrest and dispersal operations were conducted, almost 300 petrol bombs were hurled their direction, and that is why our officers had to take swift and decisive action at that time. More than 200 people were therefore arrested for alleged participation in a riot. In the meantime, rioters put up a vigorous fight, and as such, our officers had to exercise force to subdue them. And like we have always said, we must swiftly and completely subdue the rioters. Even after we arrested nearly 200 protesters, nearly 1,000 protesters continued to hurl hard objects at our officers. According to our officers, well, there's something I'd like to clarify. What you consider your concept of a person being completely subdued might be different from our definition. We had to use plastic handcuffs before we can completely subdue the rioters. We had to swiftly subdue the protesters, and as such, police batons were used at the time. CAPO has received complaints over the incident, and we are dealing with such complaints. The relevant officer is on leave, and 213 arrests were made. I believe you are referring to that incident. Since prosecutions have been made over the incident and court proceedings are underway, I would not divulge further details. On the second question, you talked about the wooden baton rounds. I'd like to explain what these wooden baton rounds are. 16 years ago, while the wooden baton rounds have been deployed by the police since 16 years ago. It is a form of blanket force or weapon, and the rounds are 1.5 inch in length, and by inflicting pain, the objective of dispersal is achieved. We introduced rubber bullets more than 10 years ago to replace the wooden baton rounds. Due to consideration of deployability and any ammunition we use are in line with our principle of using minimum or minimal force. So by deploying another round of or another type of ammunition, it does not necessarily amount to an upgrade in level of force. As to whether further means of force would be deployed in the future, like I explained, this is unlikely. However, the police would continue to examine and review the effects of different types of ammunition. If a form of ammunition proves to be effective, it will be deployed so that we can achieve our objective of using minimum force. The third question was about the police manpower position. I believe you would agree that the police force faced unprecedented challenges in the last 5 months, and the level of force or violence used by rioters constantly escalated. The scope also is also getting larger and larger, so we do need further manpower to support our operations. We welcome government measures to help reinforce our manpower. So, of course, such need does exist. In the past months, for other discipline forces or our retired officers or officers who are about to retire, many of them want to contribute or play a part in helping to end violence in Hong Kong. So the Immigration Department and Customs and Excise Department saw officers joining as special duty constables to help us restore peace in Hong Kong, and the same goes for our retired officers. Since 2015, the Civil Service Bureau introduced a scheme such that retired officers can be re-engaged on a contract basis, so based on actual operational needs, and in light of the experience of many retired officers, they want to help play a part in dealing with the current situation. So we would re-engage these retired staff, and hopefully we can work together to help restore peace in Hong Kong. About 1,000 officers were engaged. Next, please. SCMP.
Hello, SCMP. I'd like to follow up on the case that one of the PolyU's teaching staff, which allegedly was arrested on November the 18th. It was said by her colleague that that staff was instead marking some of the students' papers and had returned to the campus on November the 16th before the police siege of the campus. Is police aware of this case, and have police received any complaints on this staff who claimed to have been arrested only for marking papers instead of participating in any of the protests inside the campus? And the second question is that police have said that 318 people have been have their personal data recorded leaving the PolyU campus. Is police going to make any arrests among these 318 people? Have any arrests been made, and is police planning to make any arrests in the coming short future, in the short term? And also, I'd like to clarify also, you have just said about the Yau Ma Tei incident. You said that the 3 vehicles which were driving in high speed and towards protesters, it actually didn't happen. I mean, you said that those vehicles are not police vehicles. Can I clarify that? Are you meaning that those 3 vehicles which were driving in high speed were not police vehicles?
Well, actually, for the last part of the questions, I would like to clarify that those 3 vehicles are police vehicles, but they're not connected with the personal, the so-called injury or stampede incident. They're 2 different incidents. In fact, in the last press conference, we already clarified the use of vehicle as a tactical response. But anyway, I will leave this part to Mr. Wong to clarify the tactical use of vehicles. And for the first 2 questions, I will ask Mr. Lee to handle it.
Okay. Thank you for questions. For the first one is about the one of the arrestees came into the arrest while he or she is staying inside the university for marking a papers. Organized Crime Bureau was taking over all these cases, and so far I'm not aware of this kind of report to my desk. But actually, in general, I would like to recommend the person who made the report to the press that because according to our common law system, after the arrest, all the arrested person have been allowed to give his statement to the police. So I strongly advise that if it is the case, he or she can state his version or her version to the investigators. And I strongly advise that he or she can provide some witnesses to prove his or her version. That will be assisting us to thoroughly investigate the case. And for the second part of the question about the 318th person being not yet arrested by police and all the particular was recorded. Before we taking any actions, we will appraise all the evidence we have so far collect in the vicinity of the polytechnic universities. And also because this case, we may need to seek the legal advice for whether we prosecute or not for this section of a person. Oh, thank you.
Regarding to your questions, yes, all the 3 buses are police vehicle. Yeah. Actually, I would like to reiterate, drive fast doesn't mean unsafe, because the situation now is the police using a tactical approach in order to resolve a very, very serious crime. Right? We are talking about several thousand people gathering in on the road, causing damage and serious, using extreme violence, which seriously causing some public safety problems. Right? In order to disperse that, our police vehicles with the blue lights, with the sirens on, right? Even the blue lights not on, but the sirens on, with the horns, in order to warn them to go. All right? Why they do it and how they can do it is all based on the training, and also they are all well qualified to do it. Right? And when we do any tactical response, we also have a risk assessment to the result. This is not an easy job, but in order to fulfill it, in order to do it, the police have to do it, right? That's why our job is so difficult, and that's why we always ask for support from the public and from the press as well. Tell the public the truth, why we have to do it, and how the people don't cooperate, and result many, many rumors which try to ruin the police image. All right? So don't worry, the police will try our best to fight against this kind of illegal act. We will not back off, because we are the one who look after Hong Kong, the safety. Thank you very much.
下一條係now
Next question now. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Kong talked about that case of a person being subdued. Well, has that police officer been suspended or asked to take leave? Because at that time we were talking about the protesters has already been pinned down by a police officer. You still don't call that completely subdued? I'd like to ask another question about the Human Rights and Democracy Act of the U.S. It's been endorsed. So I'd like to ask, are you concerned that there will be police officers being sanctioned? Have you received any information that the visa or entry visa or is there anything similar of police officers to the U.S. being obstructed? And I'd like to also ask about the Indonesian reporter. It's been close to 2 months and still the identity of the police officer involved is not divulged to the Indonesian reporter. For what reason has that not been done? I will ask the second part of the question. In relation to the Human Rights and Democracy Act of the U.S., we're aware of the situation, but we have not received any concrete information. And that's why we can't make you any comment. In relation to the first and the third part of your question, I'll defer to Mr. Kong. In reply to the first part of your question, my understanding is that an injury was sustained, so the police officer is still on sick leave and not yet returned to duty. About being completely subdued, perhaps your understanding may be slightly different from ours. In the past few months, when we make arrests, more often than not, the arrestee, yes, you would see that they've been pinned down on the ground. It looked like that the person has been subdued. We want to make it more difficult for the arrestee to arrest. So we have to make sure that the situation is under control, and we will be able to use the zip tie to reduce the risk of the arrestee making an escape or someone coming to snatch him or her away. You might have seen from different footages that they would clench their fists, refusing us to handcuff them. Maybe that's what we saw. But we made a judgment to use appropriate force to inflict certain level of pain to the arrestee so that the arrestee would give up resisting. In relation to the Indonesian reporter, we have the Capo has received a complaint. My understanding is that Capo has kept in contact with the lawyer of the complainant. The lawyer of the complainant has been asking for information from us. Some legal process may be involved before a decision is made as to whether to pass on the information, but that's a side issue. The most important thing is that Capo has been in constant contact with the lawyer of the complainant. That means we have been seriously following up on this matter. Sorry, speakers of mic. Well, I don't agree that we are dragging our feet because it's just been 2 months. As I said, that Capo has been talking to the lawyer. And that inevitably involves legal matters. I don't think that it's just been 2 months and that we're dragging our feet. And in exchange of information, we all have our legal grounds as to refuse to give the information and for the other side to demand the information. If there is a legal process involved, it will take longer.
In October and November, we provide 5 written letters to the lawyer, so it simply meant that we were still exchanging correspondence. Xinhua Agency. And the cordon at PolyU was removed at about 5 p.m. And does it mean that all safety concerns have been removed? And when collecting evidence, the police found almost 4,000 petrol bombs and another 4,000 petrol bombs at the Chinese U, and a total of about 10,000 petrol bombs were found in Hong Kong, along with other offensive weapons. How would these dangerous items be handled? Mr. Kwok said 483 police officers were injured. He said in the last 6 months, is this the total number of officers who were injured in the past 6 months? And how have they recovered? We are very concerned, especially about the officer who was shot in the calf by an arrow. I would defer to Mr. Chow to talk about the situation after the cordon at PolyU was removed and the collection of evidence. In the past 2 days, on the first day, we cleared a large amount of dangerous items and offensive weapons. As for the specific offensive weapons found, I would hand over to Mr. Lee. And when we assessed the situation on the first day, both ourselves and the FSD found the situation to be more complicated than we expected, and the scope was also very wide, and as such we sent extra deployments to make sure that all dangerous goods and possible explosives would be removed as soon as possible, and that there was no immediate danger. And from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. This morning, we continue our work from yesterday, and we believe that the campus was safe. That was something we must ensure, or else it would be irresponsible for us to hand over the campus to the university management. And upon assessment, we believe that all dangerous items and offensive weapons were removed, and that there would not be any immediate danger. We ensured that the campus was safe before we handed it over to PolyU. As for the petrol bombs and weapons found, I would defer to Mr. Lee from the Organized Crime and Triad Bureau. I would not repeat the figures on the items seized. In terms of collecting evidence, it is important for us to see whether the relevant individuals are criminally liable, and we would also assess the general situation. And for possible prosecutions in the future, this is something we must produce to the courts. And our impression yesterday was that, we could see the intense people there wanted to create different kinds of weapons, including chemicals. We saw a lot of chemicals, including strong acids and alkalines, corrosive liquids. Many of them have been packaged. Government chemists told us that some chemicals could be made into explosives. Fortunately, we did not see any end products And in the conflicts a few days ago, we did not see such items being used. We also saw a rather complete manufacturing line for creating petrol bombs. So I was fascinated from manufacturing to conveyance to the front line. Well, I would not go into the details too much because I don't want anyone else to follow suit. And when seizing items such as bows and arrows, as well as catapults, they were placed at locations around the campus where police officers might be located. So I had a very strong impression that these people were creating weapons in mass and they were preparing for a battle with us. So I was confident about that. As for injuries to our officers, in the last 5 or 6 months, we saw that the violence used by protesters constantly escalated. The danger posed to our frontline officers is also getting greater and greater. Despite the protective reinforcements or protective gear given to them, there were still injuries. The number of 483 officers indicate the total number of officers sent to hospital since the beginning of the operations. Some of them there were injuries to other officers who on site, and so far one officer is still staying in the hospital for treatment, and that was the officer injured by corrosive liquids on the 1st of October. I visited many injured officers. I used to be from the Human Resources Wing. Please be reassured that they are in high spirits because they know that even if they are in hospital, their colleagues are still at the front lines, and these officers hope to return to the front lines as soon as possible. While the physical harm is actually not the worst part. The worst part is the verbal abuse directed at our officers and the doxing of their family members and attacks on their staff quarters. So apart from ensuring proper medical attention, we would offer psychological support to our officers as well. I hope the public would understand that in the past 5 months, our officers were working around the clock for one common purpose, to restore social peace. If no one breaks the law, we would not have to enforce it. I hope the public would respect our frontline officers, and their sole purpose has been to restore peace to our community. Last 2 questions, please. RTHK3.
Thank you. On the first question, I want to ask about the beating of an officer on one of the men in Yau Ma Tei. Do you mean it's right for him to do so? If so, then why is another officer trying to stop him? Secondly, I want to ask about the latest assessment, your assessment on the violence in the community. Do you think it has further escalated or died down? And is it true and legitimate to bring in wooden bullets again? Thirdly, on the siege of PolyU, how would the evidence be used? Is it going to be used for the over 1,300 people arrested? And would you get more information from the school, like CCTV from them, to help your investigation? Thank you.
Regarding the Yau Ma Tei incident, I will pass it to Mr. Gong. And then regarding the use of rubber round, I will pass it to Mr. Wong. And then regarding the PolyU evidence gathering issue, I will pass it to Mr. Lee to handle.
Before going into details of the incident, I have to reiterate what has happened on the night of the 18th of November. Actually, on that night, over 1,000 of rioters gathered along Nathan Road in Yau Ma Tei as long as around Mong Kok. A lot of them threw the bricks, other hard objects, and also petrol bombs at our colleagues. So our officer had to use force, for example, the tear gas, to disperse them. And during the process, we have successfully arrested over 200 rioters near Yau Ma Tei. According to my officer, in less than an hour of time, almost 300 of petrol bombs were thrown at our officer. I repeat this one in this press conference in order to raise the memories of every one of you. How violent was the situation? During the arrest process, our officer had encountered different levels of resistance. I have to mention here that in the past few months, when we made the arrest, we encountered a lot of difficulties stemmed from the resistance from the rioters. So we adopt an approach of full and quick control. If we do not control the arrested person quickly, different situations will happen, including other rioters will try to snatch the arrested person from us, or even on some situation they throw hard object or petrol bombs at us in order to save their friends or the other rioters. For the incident you mentioned, actually our Complaint Against Police Office has received and complained on this incident, and we have initiated our inquiry. And whether it is right or not to justify the use of force, according to what my colleagues told me, it is in accordance with our guideline. But of course, with a complaint that had been launched to the Complaint Against Police Office, we have to wait until the result of the investigation. And according to the time and location of this incident, it is probably the incident that we have arrested 213 arrested persons. And all these 213 persons we have arrested had been charged to court. As there is ongoing court proceeding, I will not further comment on the details of the incident. Thank you.
Okay, regarding to your questions of the wooden baton round, I would say wooden baton round, all right? Perhaps the figures, the length of it is 10.5 inch. 10.5 inch. It's quite long, right? A wooden baton, and the diameter is 1.5 inch around, right? So this kind of wooden baton round, we call it, it was replaced by our recent using the rubber baton rounds in 16 years ago. I would say this kind of equipment is talking about a group target. It's not talking about a specific target, right? So in order to have better effectiveness, that's why we replace it by using the rubber baton round. Right? However, I would say according to our use of force principle, which is minimum necessary, so we will regularly review our type of our ammunition type from time to time. All right? But please be remember, it's talking about the effect. Right? So whether we will introduce the wooden baton round or the rubber baton round is not the issue. It's talking about what we are aiming to have. I mean the situations. Right? So I can tell you, we'll review our ammos from time to time. All right? It doesn't mean we'll choose particular ammos for our for our operations effectiveness. It's talking about the level of force, still keeping the minimum necessary. All right? But this kind of ammos has been replaced 16 years ago already. Mm-hmm.
Is it still already in the force armory now that it can be used to
I think the kind of ammo stored for 16 years. You may ask me again the expiry ammo again. All right. So it's talk about the best period. But of course, 16 years is we can't use the old ammo as well. But during the reviews, I think if the markets have that kind of ammo which have better effect to fulfill, that may be part of our research and part of the decisions. That's normal. I think every police force will review their arms and ammo from time to time in order to choose the best equipment in order to fulfill their operation objective. All right. Thank you.
Our objective of the investigation is primarily prosecution. It very much depends on the evidence we collect in the last 2 days, and including to have some contact evidence, some of the video evidence. Of course, we have some ongoings with some interview some of the present may can give information or give evidence for us for the present who are participating in the riot in the vicinity of the polytechnics. Okay, thank you.
I would like to supplement on the second part regarding the talking about the assessment of the level of violence. There's a saying that it takes two to tango. Both the police and public have important role to play to restore public order. Restoring public order, of course, depends a lot on police work, but it also depends on the law abidance of the Hong Kong people. So here I would like to appeal to to every member of the public not to support, tolerate, or even participate in the violent act or violent protest. And with public support, we have confidence that we'll be able to restore public order soonest.
最後一條。
Last question. Cable TV. First, I'd like to ask a supplementary about the Indonesian reporter's case. If you don't divulge the identity of the police officer, doesn't it give the impression that you are harboring him? If there is no such problem, why don't you simply just give his information? Apart from the human rights and democracy, there's also the Protect Act. That is in relation to not supplying ammunition to Hong Kong. I'd like to ask you some questions about it. Is a lot of your ammunition or equipment coming from the U.S.? Would you consider sourcing from other places, say for example Eastern Europe, and what are they? And I'd like to also ask about Stampede. Well, you said previously that you did not hear about any stampede, but we have seen photographs that it happened. And it wasn't just about the buses. According to the first aid workers at the scene, they said that when police launch tear gas, it caused people to start tripping. And the allegation was that police officers used pepper spray and also obstructed first aid workers and ambulance men to rescue and give treatment. And was there actually a stampede? I will give you a brief answer before Mr. Kong answers. In relation to the U.S. Protect Hong Kong Act, we have explained on other occasions. In relation to procurement of our equipment and procurement, it is a global procurement process, and we have to follow government procurement rules. So I don't have anything to add in this regard. I will answer the first question, that is in relation to the complaint lodged by the lady. There's no such matter as harboring someone or whether we must or must not provide the information. In reply to another question I have already answered, CAPO is in constant contact with the complainant's lawyer. They will have to first resolve some legal issues. It's just like when the police ask for information from different organizations. These organizations do not have an obligation to give us the information. The most important thing is that you will have to meet relevant legal requirements in the furnishing of the information, say, for example, privacy issues or other legal requirements. It's not just about whether the complainant's lawyers can get the information. It's in the case of any request for information from anyone else, you will have to meet a similar threshold. The police will have to follow all procedures and will have to do things in a legal way.
Like I said, we would have to explore certain legal issues with their lawyers, so the work is ongoing. As for the night of 18th November, when arrests were made, some people might have tripped over and were injured. Like I said already, at Yamate and Mongkok that night, there were numerous rioters committing extremely violent acts, including hurling hard objects, hurling hundreds of petrol bombs at our offices. Do you expect the police to ignore the situation and allow people who threw the petrol bombs to go home peacefully? Some people try to shift the attention by focusing only on certain incidents. I would say that the police would arrest some people who obviously broke the law in accordance with the regulations. It was very dangerous that night, and that's why we have urge everyone not to take part in any violence. If you are present at the scene, you might be likely to be seen as having participated in such crimes, and your appearance at the site might mislead the rioters into thinking that their acts are being supported, and as such we should not support, condone or harbor any violence. As for the so-called volunteer first aiders, in the past months, we ran into difficulties in identifying different types of people at the site. We had to identify reporters, the self-proclaimed first aiders, and other people claim to be in certain roles, and they would say that they were not at the site to participate in the protests. Like we said, we arrested almost 200 people on site, and we always stress that the security and safety of arrestees are among our key considerations. And as such, for people who we could not identify the identity, they must be excluded from our cordon area, and our officers would also carry out first aid work. We have not ignored the situation of injured persons. We realize that some people might be enthusiastic, might be eager to help, but we cannot allow all these volunteer first aiders in, because we also pay much attention to the safety of arrestees. This is the end of the press conference. If you have more questions, you may wait for the next press conference or raise your questions through our newsroom. Thank you.